Welcome in, friends, to another edition of Sports from the Couch here on Mercado Airwaves. I'm your host, Mike Mercado. I want to thank you so much for making us a part of your day. Before we get to this latest segment from the latest edition of the Sports Cubicle on WCPT 820 AM, we want to remind you can follow us all over in the universe. I'm on Twitter at Mike A Media, Instagram, Mike Mercado Media. You could be interactive with the show on Twitter at Couch Sports Talk and at Sports Cubicle TV. Like, rate, review, and share us on all major podcast platforms, wherever you get your favorite podcasts at Mercado Airwaves. Check out the video version of the podcast over at youtube.com/Mercado Airwaves Network. We have swag over at teespring.com/Mercado Airwaves. And if you would like to get our weekly NFL picks, check us out at patreon.com/Mercado Airwaves. Now enjoy this segment from the latest edition of the Sports Cubicle on WCPT 820 AM with Dan Marver, Devin Tingle, Paul Chivari, and myself, Mike Mercado. Even during Super Bowl week, the NBA found a way to become the headline in the sports world, and that had to do with the NBA trade deadline. And for the first time in a long time here locally in Chicago, there was excitement because the Bulls are in a position to either make a run in the playoffs or try to get an acquisition so they can make a run in the playoffs. But because of injuries and the way the season has kind of had a fallout, the Bulls find themselves in a very interesting position where they didn't make an initial move on the trade deadline, and now all eyes are on buyout season. We're here on the Sports Cubicle to break it all down. It is Devin Tingle, Paul Chivari, the marvelous one, Dan Marver, and myself, Mike Mercado, and our Taurus Connor Chauvis, the head man in charge of the Bulls front office, had this to say: we like this group. Just waiting for guys to come back from injuries. We had a short sample of 16 games with most of our guys healthy, not including Pat, which is Pat Williams. Those 16 games, we were top 5 in offense and defense. Hope to get this group back to see what we can do. So we saw what the front office thinks of this trade deadline, what they have in their roster. I am devastated as a Bulls fan, thinking they had a chance to get to the conference finals, to see both Philadelphia and Brooklyn maybe both get better and worse at the same time. A lot of interesting trades for Cleveland. So we're here now. I'm going to throw it to the marvelous one, Dan Marver. You see the Bulls stay put. You hear what the head man has to say. Your thoughts on the Chicago Bulls staying put at the NBA trade deadline?
They managed to not have to travel to the All-Star game, their coaching staff. They just did poorly enough so that Donovan and the crew didn't have to coach the Eastern All-Stars. However, as I've said before, they do need some strength up front. And, and even now, I mean, the backcourt has been decimated more than, we thought would be an issue to begin with. The Sumo is in concussion protocol, and they're still, dealing with the other injuries. And so they need help everywhere, I think. Just to solidify their roster would be a really good thing, to make some moves without sacrificing the future, as they say, in draft picks and such, and giving away prized possessions. But there are some players, obviously, that they could move, and we can discuss that further. Who do you guys think should be moved? I mean, I have my own. I don't know if I'd move like Kobe. I thought maybe originally that we'd move him, but I don't know if we can move Kobe White now. What do you guys think?
I think it's an interesting prospect. I think they were in a position for that a few weeks back, but then you lose Alex Caruso, you lose Lonzo Ball. You don't have the backcourt that you needed. You don't have the front court that you need. Vucevic is asked to do a lot. DeMar's playing a lot of minutes, and that's why I think they were put in a position where if it wasn't Pat Williams, there wasn't a lot of value that they were willing to get rid of. What ends up being interesting is the contract situation, and our local U of I fan, Paul Chivari, knows a lot about Ayo Dosunmu, watched him be a terror in the Big Ten, and you see his development in the NBA, a second-round draft pick who arguably is a top 10 rookie, will be at the All-Star game in the rookie-sophomore game, and obviously Zach LaVine and DeMar DeRozan will be there with him. So you see the development of him. Kobe White will be asking for a contract next year. A lot of things to go on. Paul, the Bulls stay put. Your thoughts, and how much did injuries and the development of Ayo kind of change the way that they were looking at this trade deadline?
Well, I think it helps that Ayo was as good as advertised as far as what his college game was. They were talking about a year ago, when he was just kind of closing down games in the last couple of minutes on his own against some big, really good Big Ten teams. He was known as the best point guard coming out of the draft, or at least one of two or three. So the fact, we've talked about it, ad nauseum, how it's just kind of a head scratcher that he fell down to number 2 or in the second round. I mean, he's clearly a talented player. He's been playing in college long enough where there's been time to develop. He already kind of brought all the tools needed to be a complete all-around basketball player. And I think just the fact that he's had time and past leadership experience this season has really helped him become just an impactful rookie. But yeah, the injuries to the backcourt, I think, really ruin the Bulls' chances of possibly having as exciting of a season as we could anticipate. I mean, it's still a couple months away from the playoffs, and they could surprise us here. But we realistically, they weren't going to compete with the big dogs. We talk about the Nets and the Sixers making their blockbuster trade. We look around the league at teams like the Bucks, and just like all those top teams out in the West. The Bulls weren't really on paper supposed to be that type of team this year. But the thing is I think the most important thing is that what the front office is identifying, and the fact that they didn't make any moves at the trade deadline, is they didn't want to sacrifice this core that they have in place. And I think the core ended up being a little bit better, I think, than most people anticipated. Maybe they knew what they wanted to build and they knew, but the experts definitely didn't see the Bulls as being this team. They needed to get bigger. They couldn't get bigger, and they weren't really going to be in play for some of the names that were, the taller guys around the league, like an Andre Drummond. So I think it's something that they can address through the draft and free agency. And we'll see, as far as the cap, what sort of decisions that's going to be for them in terms of long-term deals and where Kobe White comes into play. But, it's disappointing because I think not doing anything at the trade deadline, is a hard pill to swallow, because you have to admit that, yeah, this team is not one of the top 4 teams in the Eastern Conference. If they are, they're a fringe 4. And I think when you saw the way that some of the other teams around the East beefed up, it set the Bulls backwards. But they shouldn't have to, they should be an impactful team for the next 5 years. So why give it up early when this was never supposed to be their contention season?
You're absolutely right. It's one of these things where expectations, they change because the information changed as we went along. We saw development, we've seen injuries, and we've seen how the conference has developed, and we've seen them struggle against teams that are over 500. And it's going to be a fascinating buyout season to see what the Lakers do, what the Bulls do, and where they put themselves in a position. And you brought up a fascinating point for Bulls fans and NBA fans, where the Bulls this season, if I were to tell you, remember when the All-Star game was here in Chicago and Zach LaVine was having that press conference, that interview, and you heard fire Pax, fire Foreman, fire Boylan by the fans, to where they're at right now. It was unimaginable that this Bulls team would be a number 1 seed heading into the All-Star break before they lost to Miami, and then you kind of see how the rest of the Eastern Conference is broken up. This is a team that if they end up a 4 or 5 seed, they've exceeded all expectations. Bulls fans shouldn't be upset about anything. The Bulls are more than capable of winning a series, being dangerous, but they're an entertaining team, and this was an organization that was in the dumpster. So, Devin, hearing all of that, hearing the optimism that you're kind of hearing from both Marver and Paul about maybe this isn't the season, but they're in a position that they're at least relevant enough to make some noise at some point. Your thoughts about the Chicago Bulls, the trade deadline, and them kind of staying put for the time being?
I mean, the big thing is with the Bulls, like you're saying, they're plagued with injuries right now. It's like, if we go, who are we really going to trade at this point that we're not going to have to give up a lot for? And would you rather have a team that, might be kind of solid, you're not going to win a lot of games, or that's, has got a few good guys, or would you rather trade all those for, okay, we got 3 all-stars here, but, let's be real, is that going to make the team and win every game? And no, we've seen that happen. This isn't NBA 2K 2022. We're not going to make that happen here. Although I'd love to talk about that trade the 76ers made. Everything for their entire team for James Harden. Really impressive here. And I think both teams actually worked out really good there. But back to the Bulls here. I mean, definitely, I think they're a team that could definitely squeeze into the playoffs here. Do I see them going far? Probably not. Do I see them getting swept or shut out? No. They're definitely a team that did exceed expectations, and they're something to, mess around with. But this Bulls team that we started at the beginning of the season, this isn't the same team we're seeing now. But again, no one expected them to be hot at the right time here. And again, I kind of like the way they're going here, because if there was another team in Chicago, they started off really hot when they weren't supposed to be. Mercado, Marver, maybe you guys know of them. 2021, they started off really hot. Then they had a huge 11-game losing streak and got rid of everything. So maybe the Bulls right now,
I
this isn't
remember
the
that.
time to panic. It's just time to sit here and not do anything crazy.
Yeah, and you bringing up old news, old stuff. I don't appreciate it, but you are right. You have to make sure that you're being responsible. I will say this too, speaking about being responsible and the reasons that John Paxson and Gar Forman did at the very end of their run, okay? Because I do think John Paxson is a smart basketball man. The fact that they never went for it when the Eastern Conference was garbage is so upsetting. Because now that the Bulls are going all in, the Eastern Conference has never been more stacked since the 90s, and you had the Knicks and the Heat and the Bulls and so on and so forth, right? Like, the Eastern Conference is filled. You just talked about it, Devin, the trade, and we'll talk more about this Bulls stuff as the season goes on. We'll see if they make a buyout. But, I kind of want to just end on this. We'll go around the cubicle and let's talk a little bit about that James Harden for Ben Simmons trade. Really, my opinion is there's still two really great players. One of them was a former MVP. The other one is offensively challenged, but he's great at almost everything else, and he's a physical specimen. Both teams also add a piece that are great assets to their true superstars. The interesting thing is they traded within not only the same division, the same conference. They're going to go against each other at some point. Milwaukee's up there staying put because they have such a veteran team. But I want to go around the table. Dev, you talked a little bit about it. So let's go to the marvelous one. Watch a lot of basketball, has seen a lot of crazy basketball in his time. You saw the trade deadline of two true superstars in James Harden and Ben Simmons, who are polarizing. What did you think about Philadelphia and the Nets making that trade?
Well, I thought the Nets also got, don't forget, Seth Curry and Andre Drummond.
Yeah.
So, it wasn't one for one. So, in the end, the Nets may come out ahead with a little more youth, a younger player. But Harden is a scoring machine. So, for the short term, the 76ers look pretty strong with Embiid and Harden. I mean, they're definitely going to be a force. And the Nets, the Nets too may have improved themselves with Simmons. So I think they'll right now both of them are going to be tough. And Milwaukee, of course, very strong. And you talk about the All-Star game 2 years ago. I think that was the start of the virus, in January 2020, when people from all over the world were in Chicago. Can you believe it? But in any event,
the Bulls got everybody sick.
Yeah, but the Bulls, I don't want them to mortgage the future. I think that they're okay. Maybe they'll maybe win a round. I never thought they were going to get to the finals, even when they were hot. But I don't want them to mortgage the future by making a deal. And I think that they'll probably, today's the deadline. What time is the deadline? I mean, they don't have much time to do anything if they're going to do something. Today being Thursday, and when this airs, we'll probably know a lot more. We'll probably even know the halftime score of the Super Bowl by now. But in any event, the show goes on for 2 hours. So it will probably be the halftime show still at 9:00. But in any event, I think that if they stand pat, that would be fine too with me, because I hate to just do something to do something. That would irk me. But they somehow got a formula that's worked pretty well when everybody's back.
Paulie Dangerous, you see what happens. The NBA changes while it still stays the same. The Eastern Conference is just a little bit stronger, but also a little bit more diverse. Your thoughts of the biggest trade of the deadline?
Brooklyn's going to be such an interesting storyline now, because I think before the season, a lot of people could have picked them to be NBA champion or at least Eastern Conference champion. And I don't know. I mean, I'm sure this hurts them in some way because, Harden's such a prolific scorer. But if you would have told me at the beginning of the season, and then this is assuming Brooklyn gets really far this year, but if you would have told me at the beginning of the season that Brooklyn was going to have success without essentially their big three, and then having their big three compromised or gone in various reasons that are all completely unique, I would have told you you're out of your mind. And with this being a superstar driven league, having Harden and Embiid on a team, how could the Sixers not be, one of the favorites now to make it to the finals, and they've been kind of that baby ever since when they got Embiid and Nerlens Noel, and they were kind of on the up and up again, that they were supposed to be, this future super team. Well, now is their window. Now's the time. They pulled the trigger. They did it. It's such a weird move. And I don't follow the NBA under a microscope to be able to tell you how that move works or doesn't work. But I do love the fact that Brooklyn kind of gets a little bit of depth, having Seth Curry and Andre Drummond, and hopefully they can produce success out of Ben Simmons, because, why it didn't work out in Philadelphia, why he refused to play, I don't really know. Hopefully it's an environment that he wants to be in now. So I don't know. I mean, I don't know in which way this makes Brooklyn better, but at the same time, it wasn't like the Durant, Irving, Harden thing was necessarily working for them. And then Philadelphia, it's like, now you got to move. Now you got to go. You have the team, so make it happen this season.
Dev, we'll let you give us our final thoughts on the big blockbuster trade. You wanted to dig deep. You've heard what the Cubicle has had to say. Your thoughts on Ben Simmons taking a bunch of really good assets, including Curry and Drummond, to Brooklyn as James Harden heads to Philly.
We're also reading the Nets also. The 76ers also trade a first and second round draft pick here. I think they even threw a few retro Allen Iverson jerseys in there. They were really trying to make this trade work out here. But I got to say,
Julius Erving.
Julius Erving jerseys too. But don't forget though, Devin, just to add it into your train of thought, don't forget Daryl Morey loves James Harden, and that goes back to his days in Houston. So you were saying.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the 76ers, this is their year. They're going for it. They're throwing everything they can here. And James Harden, he's only 32 years old. He's not as old as I thought he was, because I'm like, this guy's been playing forever, I thought. But definitely gives the 76ers a lot of chance to make a move here. And the Nets, they got a very good deal here. They're going to be very good. And not to mention with these first and second round draft picks here, I gotta say the Nets are looking to be a very dangerous team here, or continue to be a dangerous team moving forward here. So I'm not going to be like Paul, very concerned about what they had to give up here. I think they still got a shot, and they got a shot to be better even more. But the 76ers, they're like another team in Chicago that, God, me and Paul might know the name of. They really, this is their year. Next year is their year, because they're running out of time here. And I think that's what the 76ers are kind of doing here. They got to put up or shut up while the iron's hot here. And you got James Harden now, but you got him until the end of the season. If you don't, and I don't know where James Harden can go after this, but definitely the 76ers need to make a push here. They definitely got all the pieces in play. And they're going to be a dangerous team to look at. And I wouldn't even be surprised if we see, it comes down to the 76ers and the Nets moving forward in the playoffs. I'm sorry.
Yeah, there's a good chance that ends up being your conference finals. I also do think that the Milwaukee Bucks will have something to say. Also, Philadelphia finding a way to keep Thibault and Tobias Harris. So, they got themselves a nice little team. But let us know your thoughts. Are you excited? Were you bummed out that the Chicago Bulls didn't make a move? What did you think about the big trades and all the trades? The NBA was buck wild on Thursday as they made the NBA trade deadline happen. It's come and gone. What are your thoughts? Let us know on Twitter at Sports Cubicle TV. It's Devin Tingle. It's Paul Chivari. It's the marvelous one, Dan Marver. I'm Mike Mercado.